Hello, everybody. Well, my name is Tara, and I'd like to welcome everyone to today's conversation on what should I learn. I think there's a bit of an echo. Perhaps others should mute so that, uh, that's better. Okay, so this is the third in a series of live chats on this channel, what we call fireside chats. The first one was learning to learn, and the second on why learn mathematics. And this one is on what should I learn. That got lost in the echo the first time I said that, I think. Now, if you were not there for the previous live sessions and are interested, recordings are available on Think's YouTube channel. For today's conversation, the panelists, or should I say participants, are Bhushan Patwardhan, Lakshmi and KP Mohanan. The plan is for the panelists to have a conversation that lasts, say, 40 to 45 minutes, and then we'll take questions from you. I'll come back to read your questions to the panel, but before I go, in our previous chats, the custom has been to not do formal introductions of the panel members. I'm going to deviate a bit from that custom because Bhushan and Lakshmi are both coming to the Think screen for the first time. So I'd like to say something about them. Now, there's much that you would learn about them from their CVs. But what I want to focus on are the impressions that I have gathered from my interactions with them. Dr. Bhushan Patwardhan is a biomedical scientist, currently distinguished professor at the Interdisciplinary School of Health Sciences in Pune University. What I have found remarkable about him is two things. One, the wide range of his experience in education, in research, as well as in positions and committees that influence policy, and the directness and the critical mind that he brings to each of these. The second is the body of work that he has contributed by exploring and explaining aspects of Ayurveda with an understanding of the theoretical underpinnings of the system. And by looking at the parallels between Ayurvedic and allopathic traditions from an integrative perspective. Welcome, Bhushan. Dr. Lakshmi Vaidishwaran, who has a PhD in process optimization and process development, is currently vice president at an analytics AI consulting company. As with Bhushan, if I go into the details of all her experience, publications, awards, patents, and so on, there won't be time for conversation that we're waiting for. So just two things about Lakshmi. One, she brings with her the experience of leadership roles in a number of companies in the corporate world. And two, and this is special for us, she is a member of the first family where all four members of the family have done Think's flagship course, Inquiry and Integration in Education, in 4 different years, of course. And all 4 of them have done it with a passion and commitment that got them invited to the follow-up intensive course that Think offers. So, Lakshmi, welcome. As you can see, Bhushan and Lakshmi come from very different backgrounds. You might say different worlds. But there is something they share at the core. They are both learners and thinkers. And they both have experience in mentoring and in research and development. So I look forward to a conversation that brings us fresh perspectives on what we should learn. Now, Lakshmi will play a dual role today as panelist and anchor of the session. She is the Sutradhar, as she puts it. So Over to you.
Thank you so much, Tara. We have about 45 minutes of discussion, as Tara put it. A very open-ended topic that we have chosen for the fireside chat, and the profound field of education to discuss. Two luminaries from the field of education. So, needless to say, we'll have to go cracking. 45 minutes is not going to be enough. So without wasting any time, let me just try and set up a stage for the discussions to happen. So Bhushan and Mo, you've spent so many years in the education area. Could you identify, let's say, top 3 challenges, essentially to let us know where we are today and where your vision of education will like to get us in the coming years? So over to you, Bhushan, if you can take that question first.
Okay, actually, Mo would have been the best person to take it first, opening batsman. He is the think tank. But okay, the big challenge I think today is about the purpose of education. Maybe we have lost the purpose of education, why we want to learn, why we are learning, and what we are learning. Answers to these questions are not really conclusive or satisfactory to those who want to learn. So I find there is a lot of confusion in the minds of people that what to learn, how to learn, and for what purpose to learn. Am I learning something just to get job? Am I learning to become educated? What is educatedness? All these are the questions, that unfortunately in education system we are not able to really address well. And I think these are some of the big challenges, because unless we have clarity in these questions, learners will not get to know what really they are looking for. And today there is a mad rush, the mad rush to go into IITs, mad rush to become IAS, and there is some kind of a continuous race that is going on. That is another problem, So in this race, we lose the basic purpose of education. Our all efforts are going that how can I become top 10? How can I even go higher and higher? And this brings in lot of stress. A lot of stress is being brought in on the minds of learners, on the minds of parents, and also on their pockets. A lot of stress is coming up. So these are, I think, some of the challenges. I can expand on some of them as we progress. But now I will let Mo add more.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with Bhushan that the most serious challenge is that of figuring out the purpose of education. Is there echo? And one way of thinking about the purpose of education would be figuring out the purpose of education would be what would be the danger if we abolished all institutions of education and we did not have any institutionalized education at all? What would happen to humanity? The answer would be that 20, 30, 50 years from now, we will not be in a state of well-being that we expect to have. So the purpose would be short to be the well-being of humanity 40, 50 years from now. Of course, it's a long-range vision, but that is what we should have in our mind. And if that is our purpose, then we should ask, what should we expect children to learn? There are two ways of framing an answer to that question. One is in terms of the abilities. What is it that our learners should be capable of? This is the how-to question. Learn how to do something. The other is what should they understand? So this is the what, in the sense of that I learned that, or I learned about gravity, the concepts, the ideas, etc. This is the declarative knowledge. So these are the two central questions to ask. How to do something, abilities, and concepts and ideas, which comes under understanding. Unfortunately, now what happens is in both cases, both the abilities domain and the understanding domain, the knowledge that we give them and the abilities that we give them are extremely fragmented. So people learn things like solving quadratic equations, solving linear equations, solving differential equations. But why? Why should they have those skills? What's the purpose of acquiring those skills? That question is never answered because of the fragmentation. So I would say that a real challenge would be to figure out what is the value to learners 10 years after they graduate. And that answer must be in terms of abilities and forms of understanding which transcend disciplinary boundaries, not in terms of things like physics and chemistry and history and sociology and biology and mathematics, but in terms of things that every educated person should understand and be able to do. We call this transdisciplinary education, education that transcends disciplinary boundaries. And we haven't started thinking about those things. That's a real challenge.
Thank you so much for that, Mo. And I think, the hat that I'm going to wear today is of someone who is at the receiving end of the education system. So I represent industry, and not particularly any one company, but given the challenges or the way I see the education system evolving, I think, the fact that we are creating a new world every 5 years, or maybe even faster than that, is there for real. And somewhere my feeling is that the education system could be trying to play catch up with all these new requirements that are coming from the new world. In other words, the curriculum is expanding, and the understanding or the knowledge that people are getting out of education, it's getting compromised because of the volume that has now become our focus. So is that something that is going to impact the what do I gain out of education? I think somewhere the way education has to be positioned itself in order to cater to the new world is not very clear. Do we focus on the brass tacks, or do we just get you all the skills that are required for the ever-changing times? So that seems like one of the issues that I see is confronting education, not the primary one, of course. The one that is also, and probably touches one of the points that you mentioned more, is the spirit that we get out of the education system itself. We are categorizing our learning into several subjects, but where is the spirit of, the aesthetics of the world around us coming through poetry? How are we looking at specific subjects? How are we getting into that spirit of responsibility that can come out of a subject like civics, or the understanding about the world around us through a subject like geography? So we have sacrificed the spirit, the soul, and we've become too exam driven, perhaps. I don't know. So somewhere the purpose of education itself, or what we are getting out of it, so both the what and the how, that has become a topic for discussion. And maybe in the follow-up questions you can touch upon what you see is something that we can do as part of Think, or as a collective. What would be the challenges that provide the maximum impact in an area like education? So again, back to you, Bhushan. If you can just touch upon some things. You've been part of the UGC, you've been a change maker in more ways than one. How do you see that change happening? You're on mute, Bhushan.
No, I'll continue, Lakshmi, what you have been talking about, and I will come to I talked about purpose. That is a big challenge, but education objective is also relevant to that. Both are linked. So in my opinion, I would just give you quick reflection on what I think about education objectives, or elements of education objectives. I divide them into 4 quadrants. The first important quadrant, of course, that everybody is concerned about is academic quadrant. And this academic is not only about getting information and knowledge. Of course, you have to have general knowledge, intellectual strength, the scientific temper, the self-reliance, the interdisciplinary or transdisciplinary, as Mo said, the transdisciplinary exposure, the aptitude, the independent thinking capability, reasoning ability, habit of learning. All this should become part of the academic domain and not just getting information which our students today are much smarter than us getting information. Teachers' role should change, and so that's the academic part of it. Second, equally important, is the moral and spiritual values. Education is not only academic. Education also is about emotional maturity, the ethical values, simple living, selfless services, humility, truthfulness, dignity of labor, high moral character. All these are also important when you talk about education objectives. The third quadrant, I think, is about social sensibilities. If we are living in society, education cannot be disconnected. We have to know about our national culture, our heritage, the tolerance for diversity, national integration, understanding the rural life, the classless, casteless society, political system, economic system, social forces, their needs, civic sense, as you also mentioned, the respect for rights, duties, and discharging obligations, and high moral character. All these come under social sensitivity. If our students are not able to understand what are the agonies of farmers who are attempting suicide, I think our whole education objective is not complete just by getting a degree from IIT or IIM. No, and the last quadrant I will put as quality of education. Whatever we do has to be linked with quality. We should. So academic objective, moral and spiritual values, social sensibilities, and quality cutting across all. I think that we are there to take all this as a holistic package and not look into silos. Yeah, I'll just stop here at the moment, but I can expand on these points little more later if necessary.
Mo, your thoughts?
Okay, I would like to add to some specifics in terms of the four quadrants that Bhushan mentioned. Take, for example, the academic quadrant and look at what is happening now to that quadrant in the education system, school and college. And let me raise this question. Suppose a student takes mathematics as a subject and you ask the question, if that student, somebody who gets a BSc in mathematics, becomes a dancer, becomes a historian, becomes a minister, becomes a doctor, what can that person take away from mathematics? Not the details of mathematics, not how to solve differential equations. These things are not relevant for somebody who becomes a minister, somebody who becomes a historian. But there is a certain quality of mathematical thinking, an attitude towards mathematics that you can take away. The training to become a thinker in mathematics, that is a value. The same thing can be said about history, not the information in history. A historian becomes a minister. What can that person learn, take away from history such that it is of value to that person? So it should be not the details of the subject, but what is valuable in that subject that you can take out of that subject to a generally educated person. That is not attempted. So let me take a specific example. One of the things that you can learn from mathematics is rigorous reasoning. Is that ever taught? Is logic one of the subjects of school, secondary school, or compulsory undergraduate education? No, it is. If at all, it's taught. It is taught as a branch of mathematics or a branch of philosophy. It's not taught to other people. Logic is not taught to, for example, biology students. This shows a certain lack of appreciation of the kinds of things that are of value to everybody in each subject. That is not done. This is about the academic aspect of what Bhushan was talking about. About the ethical, spiritual values, the moral, I have very little to say, yes, but this has to be distinguished from, spiritual should be distinguished from religious. So learning about your own religion is not going to give you spirituality, but the religious temperament, regardless of the particular gods that you worship, the religious communities, the rituals, there is something about religion that is valuable that we should take away. And if you look at that, all religions have the same spiritual substance. This is what is important, what is common to all of them. I'm again arguing for the transdisciplinarity idea. Trans-religious temperament is what we want. Trans-religious spirituality and ethics. Bhushan also talked about the citizenry, the third quadrant. Now, we should be a citizen of our country. Let's say in India, we should be a citizen of India. And if you are in US, we should be citizens of US. If you are in Pakistan, we should be citizens of Pakistan. But beyond all that, beyond citizenry in particular countries, we should also be global citizens. What that means is that there is no us and them feeling. It is true that I am a member of the Malayali community in the sense that I speak Malayalam, but that doesn't mean enmity towards other Tamil speakers or Kannada speakers. I am a member of Kerala because I was born and brought up in Kerala. That doesn't mean I am hostile towards Tamilians, people in Tamil Nadu, people in Andhra Pradesh, and so on. I am also a citizen of India, but I'm also a citizen of the world, and that has precedence over all other citizenry. And this is not taught. What does it mean to say global citizenship? This is not part of our current education, and this is of highest importance in the current world today. Quality, again, the fourth quadrant. We are interested only in quantity right now, not in quality. We want to increase the number of students in the number of universities. But where is the quality of education going? If you increase the number of students in a class from 50 to 200, obviously the quality is going to go down unless we are also concerned with quality. That question has not been part of the education discourse. True, we want to extend education to all, but mere number is not sufficient. We have to have quality of education. This has been in various policies, quality and quantity, but they have not addressed the question of quality. What does it mean to say high quality education is not addressed in our education discourse? I think I'll stop there. And
very interesting indeed. And I just wanted to, touch upon some of the points that came out of both your, summarization of this topic. Bhushan points out that academics is but one of four quadrants in this whole, profound area of education. And yet, if we look at the metrics or the measure for how academics or the education system itself wants to gauge its successes, it's all centered around that one quadrant. So I think somewhere, the changes that we all attempt to make are probably going to stay confined within the academic area itself. And more the volume versus the quantity versus quality discourse that I've been part of. You've raised it so many times. I think, just to find what are those basic building blocks which cut across, which transcend the learning that is required across multiple stages of one's life, multiple disciplines that one could be part of, multiple roles that we may need to confront. That, I think, is probably something that we need to focus as part of education. And the other part, Bhushan, you talked about moral, spiritual development of the human being itself. I would like to ask you, we want the education system to create the innovators who will build the new tomorrow. We want people who can be the warriors, who can, shield the world of today, who can face the world as, times are changing. But what we see coming out of the education system today is rather, so much of fragility that we see around students coming out of the crucible of education, pieces of bone china. So is the education system really even focusing on that? Or are we doing a damage by focusing too much on one quadrant? So over to you, Bhushan. You're again on mute.
You still
Yeah.
mute. Yeah.
Yeah. No, thanks, Lakshmi, for that excellent point. Uh, the I think that our education system is still trapped in the colonial legacy. You know, the first three universities which were established in India, Mumbai, Madras, and Kolkata. What was the purpose of that education? You know, the basic purpose of that time, the education was to create people who will get educated, get degrees, and serve as babus in East India Company. That was the main purpose of that time education. Our education legacy goes back to the Gurukula system, which was converted then into a Kulaguru system or Vaishyantar system, and which was predominantly about teaching. You know, our whole approach has been teaching, thinking that teachers have monopoly to teach, and what we teach inside the classroom is only teaching. No, this was totally against our own culture or our own legacy of education, which used to happen during the Panini or Charaka or Kautilya's days. You know. So the teaching typically today is extremely structured. It is serious, passive, forceful, unidirectional, monologue type, and authoritative. Teachers have authority. You know, this is all teaching which has we have inherited from that kind of a colonial legacy, because that time it was required. We have to now transform or transcend into learning. We talk about learning, but are we really actually implementing in our system? The answer is really a big question mark. So learning is more flexible, it is playful, it is active, it is voluntary, it is multidirectional, it is dialogue driven. You know, question and answer is the basis of our pedagogy. You know, and today look at the students. Means, are teachers encouraging students to ask even questions? And it has to be interactive. Even today, Lakshmi, I learn from my students every day. So teachers need to really change, and that typical teaching component what we are giving more focus, and therefore that first quadrant of academic becomes most important and most dominating. We have to transform that into learning, wherein students aspirations, students interest, you know, student capabilities, we don't consider that at all. So this needs a major change, and I feel that there are some good pointers that have come out in the National Education Policy 2020. But again, policy is good, but how good it will be implemented, that is very important. And I'm really looking at the point when this policy implementation takes some momentum. So again, I will stop because I don't want to give a continuous chunk, but make some points. During Q&A, I will be able to pick up again some of these points.
So thank you so much, Bhushan. Want to continue what Bhushan touched upon. You've been a teacher in the US system. You were at MIT. You were in Singapore. You were in India. Where do you think India can adapt some of the changes that Bhushan touched upon?
Yeah, I think for the first time, I personally experienced the Gurukula system of education in my own learning was at MIT. Until I went to MIT, the education that I received was this authoritarian education where the teachers decided what I should learn, all kinds of boring things which I found completely irrelevant. So I would say the first time I was educated was in the Gurukula of the MIT department. I'm using the word Gurukula in a deliberate sense, but Gurukula is not something ancient. It can exist now in the spirit that Bhushan mentioned. And what was unique about this Gurukula system? Because we learned not just in the classroom, but outside in the classroom. We learned from our peers, and the teachers learned from us. It was a very important condition that the students teach the teachers. If the teachers did not learn from the students and that system, then you are not considered a good student. So the first thing that I learned from MIT Gurukula was how to challenge my teachers and show that my teachers are wrong. This is not part of our education. So this is important. There was also a culture of debate, okay, which we had again in earlier education in India. In fact, Tarkashastra is part of a heritage. What happened to that? Debating has disappeared. We are not allowed to debate. No debate among the students, no debate between the students and the teachers. These are all part of the academic culture. But these aspects of academic culture, what NEP calls higher order cognition, academic, but they seep into other things. They seep into, for example, thinking about ethics, thinking about spirituality, thinking about nationhood. So this culture will, once it is developed, it will encompass all aspects of our life, including all the 4 quadrants, if we do it right. Of course, I'm not saying that all that is needed for ethics is simply ethical reasoning and ethical thinking. There is also something else that is needed, namely ethical sensibility, the emotional aspects of ethics. That academic culture cannot bring you, but then something else, we should also foster those aspects, the emotional aspects. And if you have a 4-quadrant system in which these aspects are taken care of, we'll have a much better form of education.
Right. So let me move on to the next question. When we want to bring about any change in a complex system like education, we see a lot of interconnections. So you speak to any one stakeholder, a middle school teacher, she says, the child got messed up in the younger years, high school, all the way to college. There's always a feeling of helplessness in not being in control, either in the formative years or the later years, and therefore the education could not achieve what the purpose was. And then you add to it the teaching system, the parenting that is also part of the overall education for a child. And it becomes a completely, very hard to manage problem. So if I were to ask both of you, where is the biggest lever that we have right now to bring about that change? What would you have to say? Bhushan. You're on mute, Bhushan. Yeah.
No, I'll let Mo chip in first, and then I will come in.
I was kind of hoping that Bhushan would speak and I can piggyback on that. Cheated me, Bhushan. Okay. All right. So I have to think on my feet now. I would say 2 things. One, you are right, Lakshmi, in saying that this is the complex adaptive system. What that means, it's a dynamical system. It has all the properties of dynamical systems. It also adapts. It's not just a dynamical system. It's a complex adaptive system. Now, what that means is there are multiple players doing different things, and they all interact with each other, and the result will be the interaction between all of these players. We have to understand that. And of course, in that system, we should understand what you are pointing to as the anchor points. Where can we intervene maximally? Because complex adaptive systems and non-linear systems have the following property. If you try to change something, it takes a different path and continues as before. An equilibrium system has that property, it doesn't transform itself. This was pointed out by Ilya Prigozhin several decades ago. But this is not an equilibrium system. We should change that into a non-equilibrium system. What that means is, if you act in certain anchor points, the system will transform itself. But if you act anywhere else, the system will continue doing whatever it is doing. And this is what we have been experiencing over the last 50 years. No matter what changes we do, the system adapts itself and continues exactly the same way, no change. So in order to change that, we need to ask ourselves 2 questions. One is, avoid this blame assignment syndrome. So if you ask teachers, what are your problems? What is it that you would like to do? The teacher would blame the students, the teacher would blame the parents, the teacher would blame the principals, everybody else. They don't ask the question, what is it that I can do given my constraints? What is it that I can do to change the system a little bit? Same thing, the principal. The principal should ask, what is it that I can do given my teachers, given my students, given the parents, given the government, what can I do? Now, we can do this with everybody, okay? Let us say the educational bodies, MHRD and so on, they should also ask exactly the same question. We know that we have the present condition, all kinds of constraints, but given those constraints, given the economy, given everything else, is there some improvement that I can bring about? Though we should be looking inside ourselves. And the students should do the same thing. I would recommend that students who are frustrated by the system should ask, given that this is the system, what can I learn? What is it valuable that I want to learn? How can I learn that? If we all start asking those questions, I think we'll come together as a unified entity. That is one answer. The other is we need to identify the anchor points. Where do we change such that that change will percolate to everything else? Okay, this is also another aspect of the complex adaptive system. I can offer a guess. I think the anchor point is the examination system. Why? Because students want to do well in the examination. For whatever reason, it doesn't matter. This is a dire need. That is why we have these tutorial coaching factories. Parents want their children to do well in the examination. So given society, the whole society is hoping that their students will do better. We can capitalize on that. If you change the examination system, we did that in US in a program that we developed. We changed the nature of the examination questions. And initially, students didn't know what to do. They were panic-stricken. And we said, we'll help you. The examination questions tested the students' ability to think, the ability to discover, and various kinds of higher-order cognitive abilities. For example, the ability to choose between two competing theories. This was tested in the examination. The ability to detect logical contradictions, that was tested in the examination. And when the examination system tests what NEP 2020 calls higher order cognitive abilities, students will ignore textbooks and syllabus and focus on that. They will try and desperately figure out how to get there. The coaching factories will change, because if they want students to do well, they will have to focus on higher order cognition. Parents will change. That, I think, is the crux of the matter. We need a few people who will change the nature of the examination questions. Of course, initially, if you do that in one go, there'll be chaos because we are not prepared for it. If you do that slowly over a period of, let's say, 10, 15 years, very gently, and at the same time, parallel, we help our students, we help our teachers, we help textbook writers, we help examiners, everybody. But it begins from there. But incremental change in that direction. And if in 20 years, our examination questions test higher order thinking abilities following NEP 2020, then we have a chance. That, I think, in my opinion, that is the anchor point. And we are right now, we are completely unwilling to change the nature of the exam questions. We only change the format of exam questions, not what it is testing.
Right. Good. Thank you, Mo. Yourself, Bhushan, yeah.
Yeah, no, I took some time because I wanted to retrieve something which is from our article, which Mo actually has written it out. And he has asked a question: if we want to really change, what should we do? If you get all the freedom in the world, what you would do? And he says that it is important to unearth the implications of getting outside the box. And for instance, suppose a newly set up university were to design an undergraduate program, what they should do or what they can do. First thing is abandon ill-conceived, harmful distinctions like physics versus chemistry or natural sciences versus social sciences. The overemphasis on STEM, in our country has really made our new generation right brain shrink. The humanities, social sciences, they are equally important, but that message we are not giving. The second is organizes the entire curriculum around question to investigate instead of departments and schools. This structure of department and schools is outdated. The whole curriculum should be around the questions to investigate. Devotes the first year to compulsory foundation course on transdisciplinary inquiry and transdisciplinary understanding. Devotes the second year to compulsory foundation courses in multidisciplinary questions. And devote the third year for preparation for specialization at the master's level, if you want to go to the master's level. And secondly, these compartments, like this is a academic course, this is a skill course. I think we have to get out of that. Every subject requires skill, and we should also respect what students want. We talk about student-centric system, but I'm sorry, we are not yet in anywhere near student-centric system. It is completely teacher-centric system. When student wants to learn something, he or she will go to a college. College will give them syllabus, or first they will sell them prospectus. Sell them prospectus. That prospectus will give list of courses. Those courses will have their own syllabus. We don't stop even there giving syllabus. We give them ready-made model questions. We don't even stop there. We give them model answers, and we evaluate based on how effectively they reproduce our answers. I think this is completely outdated model what we are following, and we have to really change quickly as possible. At the end, I really want to really, Lakshmi, quote Brian Kaplan. Brian Kaplan wrote an excellent book called The Case Against Education. And he wrote in that why education system is a waste of time and money. And Brian Kaplan, as you know, he's a very, very well recognized academician. And he writes there, the labor market doesn't pay you for the useless subjects you master. It pays you for the pre-existing traits you reveal by mastering them. This is very important. So we should not think that just because we are getting graduated from IIT, some Google or Microsoft, they are going to recruit you. No, they don't recruit you based on what knowledge or skills you have acquired in IIT. They spot you because based on your pre-existing traits, and the education should be geared in such a way that these pre-existing traits get all the opportunities to flourish and grow more. Another book I want to also mention about is by Ha Jun Chans, and he writes about 23 things they don't tell you about capitalism. In that book, he writes at least half of the university education is vested in the essentially zero-sum game of sorting, and he has given very interesting example of this sorting. Why I mentioned all this is Education Policy 2020, it has given very good pointers towards moving in this direction. But I don't see that enthusiasm or pace which is necessary to bring this disruption. And so unless we bring this disruption actually in practice, the anchors what you talked about, it will be very difficult to really bring them in reality.
Good. Thank you so much. So I think I now have the challenge of using the next 3 minutes to get your responses to what should I learn. Now, the topic itself was very broad-based for a reason, because, there is a student's journey from, through the K-12 years all the way till their job requirements or the research requirements that they are after. You also have the multiple stakeholders we talked about. Each one needs to have a certain thing that they can take away, or some learning that they need to be part of to make this whole enterprise a very successful one. Plus, we are also confronted with the reality that the world is changing ever so fast. There are going to be disruptions. I mean, not at the level of COVID maybe, but there are, new technology innovations, the way we work, the way we live, everything changes. So what is it that you would say each one of them, or maybe let's just use those one or two things which cut across all these stakeholders and say, okay, so this is what is essentially something that we would like to learn. And I'll start with this, from the point of view of industry. I think what I would like the students to come out with is a good amount of flexibility to adapt to multiple situations. The sense of appreciation, because today I'm working on matter A, tomorrow it could be something different, and like I was saying, it could be different sheets of music that are handed out to us. You come with your innate ability, your voice cords, which will help you sing the music that everyone wants to hear. But we have to be extremely adaptable. We can't be singing to a zero audience situation, or singing something that no one wants to hear. So there are some challenges that or some things that we can acquire, and the learning to learn, because in this ever-changing world, how quickly we adapt, how quickly we learn, how quickly we can figure out what is there in the music sheet and then deliver what is required. So that is my takeaway from coming from industry. Now, I would like to hear your perspectives as educationists. What is it that you would like the students to learn?
I think
Mo, you go in first. Yes, and we are already, we've consumed the 45 minutes.
A very quick question. Bhushan mentioned the author of the book, 23 Things About Capitalism. I didn't catch the name of the author. Could you mention that? The name of the author. I was asking Bhushan, name of the author of the book, 23 Things That You Didn't Learn About Capitalism.
Yeah, name of the author is, I'll spell it out for you, H-A-Joon, Hajun Chang, C-H-A-N-G.
Okay. Okay. You see, I think, Lakshmi, I think you're pointing to when you say adapt to whatever is needed. So you may be a math major, but you have to work in Google. Or let's put it this way, math is slightly easier. You are a historian. You have a history BA and you are hired in Google. You have to learn whatever is needed for Google in that situation. So what that means is the ability to learn independently. We don't train our students to do that. So as part of the higher order learning, higher order cognition is the ability to learn independently, without teachers, without anybody's help. You should learn on your own, by your own thinking. And if you want to learn a new subject, you can always go to the internet and learn, get the information and so on. So there are many aspects of independent learning that we have to initiate our students to. And if the students become independent learners by the time they graduate, they should be able to read. And one of the things that I find is that our graduates are unable to read, unable to get knowledge by reading. In fact, they're unable to get knowledge even by listening to people. So that should be the fundamental aspect of education, the ability to learn independently, the ability to learn what you want to learn, not what somebody else wants you to learn. And of course, that will then connect to what the company wants you to learn. Because if you think that it is important for you to learn what the company wants you to learn, then that becomes your motivation. This is, of course, instrumental motivation. There is also the other motivation that comes from within. Both are important. And if you do that, the education system, then the kind of problems that you are facing in companies will disappear.
Right. Bhushan, yourself?
Yeah, I think Mo has made those points. I'll just add a technology component to it. Actually, Lakshmi is a technologist, so she would be able to do it better. But I think our teachers also are not really getting aligned to the technological evolution. And they should really guide students, teachers' roles as mentors, what is happening around. They should prepare students to really face not for one job, for second job, for third job. As you rightly said, things are changing so rapidly, and we should make students really capable of facing this situation, not just help them to get more and more marks by giving them ready-made notes. By the way, the notes, typical class notes, which used to be the power and monopoly of teacher, has completely gone. When I was a teacher, good teacher's notes used to be such a power, and that was a monopoly of that teacher, and they used to revolve around not only in one college but several colleges. That has completely gone today. Today, because of the technology, the things have changed. And I must tell you that my students are much smarter than me in getting information because they have grown up with the technology. I have learned the technology. So this is a big difference. And we have to respect that part. Today, we are not respecting that part. Today, we are not respecting students' capabilities at all. Today, we are not engaging students. And as Mo said, we are not really trying to learn from students. And this has to change. The future education, the robotics is coming in a big way, but teachers' role will never change. Teachers, not role will change, but teachers' need will not change. The cobots will emerge. Teachers' efficiency will grow much more if social robots come in. The artificial intelligence or machine learning, the typical holographic technique, if you look at it, the hologram will entirely change the language link or the parsing technologies which are coming up. The learning in my home language or my mother tongue. This is extremely important. We are not giving that to our students. Even today, Lakshmi, I can read better and understand better in Marathi, which is my own mother tongue. So every student would like to do that. So these are some of the changes which I think with technology it is possible. It is possible to really not only skill them in one particular, but make them capable of multi-skilling so that their employability becomes sustainable, and not just for the campus placement limitation. The learning outside classroom, outside campuses, society and industry connect. All these, and finally I will repeat again what Mo said. We have to really go in a direction to create responsible global citizens. So all this, I know it's a very tall order, but there is no option. Adopting technology and going ahead with them without really compromising our own core is going to be a challenge.
Lots of follow-up questions in my mind, and I'm sure there are lots of questions that the participants also, the others on the call also have got them coming. So Tara, over to you. I'm sorry I have really crossed over, maybe 6 more minutes have been used up in this discussion, but well worth it. So over to you, Tara.
Tara, you're muted.
You're on mute.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, this is a good time to move into questions, and we do have some good questions. But before that, just to turn everyone's attention to Think's annual online course, which starts in 2 weeks. The course is called Inquiry and Integration in Education, and applications are still open. They are open till the 8th of May. I'm not going to give a sales pitch for the course, but I would encourage everyone who hasn't heard of it to look at the description of the course at our website. Okay, all right, over to the questions. The first question is from Tarun. It says, what is the difference between learning and education? Okay, have the panel.
And Mo always has the honor of going in first.
What is this discrimination against me? Okay, I think everybody should be equal. Okay, all right. Okay, I'll say what I think it is. Learning can apply to information. It can also apply to low-level skills. So, for example, you can say, I learned how to ride a bicycle, or I learned that bicycles have 2 wheels, not 3 wheels. That's a tricycle. These are kind of low-level forms of learning. Education is not learning of those skills and acquiring pieces of information, but something that is much higher, educating the mind. So what does it mean to say an educated mind is the question we should be asking. This is where the concept of general education comes in. What is it that an educated person should understand and be able to do, regardless of the degrees? Whether this person has a BA degree, BSc degree, BCom degree, or MTech degree, doesn't matter. What if that person is educated? Regardless of the particular subject, what should an educated mind be like? And that is where exactly, let me go back to the NEP's higher order cognitive abilities. That is exactly where education is located in. In addition to those academic abilities, an educated person should also be a global citizen, should care for others, should have high ethical values, and should have what we referred to earlier as the spiritual stream, regardless of the particular religious communities, a certain spiritual attitude towards nature, which even atheists share, in fact. So I think these are some of the qualities of educatedness as distinct from mere learning. Of course, educatedness also requires learning, but that's a higher order learning abilities.
Right. Bhushan, you want to add something, or can we move on to the next question? Again,
you
you're
can
on mute.
You can move to the other question.
Next question, Tara, in the interest of time. Yes.
Okay. So the next question, Vignesh asks, Mo, the academic culture you outline is enticing. How do you think we can bring this culture in this large country, right from school to college?
I don't know, because this has to do with people, right? It is not changing the system, you have to change the people. I don't know anything about people. I'm very good at designing systems without people. In fact, I wish our universities were without teachers and students. That's my ideal of university without, humans are complicated things for me. So I would leave that question to Lakshmi and Bhushan. I don't know how to answer the question.
Yeah, Lakshmi, you
Bhushan,
want
yourself?
to?
Well, you can take this question. It has more to do with the academic culture. So both academicians can answer this one.
Yeah.
Well, actually, it's a very loaded question, and see, right, but we have to ask this question. What are we really, as a part of academic, trying to give in schools and colleges? We are for instance, school education or even college education. How much time students are really getting, to build this kind of academic culture? Are we giving them time? We are binding them from all the sides, and the culture, what you are talking about in a large country or a school, will have to start building that culture at various level. And I think the first level is, in my opinion, is liberating students. And for instance, I'll just give you one example. I did this exercise while I was vice chancellor of one of the universities, which was very strong in management programs. And I looked at the management curriculum. I said that nobody has changed this curriculum for years together. So we involved students in designing the curriculum, and students were able to point out the junk in that curriculum. And I won't believe the kind of junk that was existing in most of the curriculum. So we have to remove that, and students are the best curators, I can tell you. So we must bring them in, and together we'll have to try to change this culture or build this culture.
Yep, and I'll just like to add, as far as my impression goes of the academic side of things, the rural side of India is still untouched. So, there is a lot of talent that comes out of there. They've been spared by the maladies of the education system. So that part is good. And we don't necessarily need to attempt making a whole countrywide change, because there is a critical set that we need to move forward with. They are going to be the ones who will be required to have those skills. Probably there is a lot of task-based work that the country will need. Not everybody has to be part of this fancy outline, right? Because they will be misfits for those kinds of jobs. So I'm saying let's probably not take too overarching a mandate for us to work on.
Yeah, Lakshmi, just one point I will add here, that we have been talking about the divide, various types of divide. But current divide of digital divide is going to be a big concern, because what you talked about, the rural areas and their students, it's about the opportunities. So we are leaving a large number or our population, and the sufficient opportunities are not being given. So this is going to be very serious in years to come. How to handle the digital divide.
True.
I think Vigneshwar Ramakrishnan's question kind of stumped me. So I'd now like to go back to that question. I've had a little bit of time to think. Here are some tentative ideas. I think we should focus on educating not only the students, but also the other key players. We should have programs for educating teachers. We should have programs for educating, not training. Educating teachers, educating parents, educating principals, educating board members, educating textbook writers, every stakeholder in education. So we should help them to become educated themselves along with students. And if that happens, they will be able to participate in the process of education much better. You cannot expect somebody to teach ballet without some experience of ballet. So we have to help the teachers become educated. We have to help all people, parents. We should have programs for parents, not providing information and skills, but to become educated so that they will be able to help the students become educated.
Good. All right. Thank you.
I think there are some more questions. I think we'll take at least one more and see where that takes us. This is a set of two questions, and I think related to what the answers that you had to the previous one. Let me just read that out. This is from Muhammad Ibrahim Abdullah. Bhushan and Mo are making a great point that education more holistic than pure academic. But
Can we
is
have
there
the question on the screen? Yeah.
but is there space and time for kids? Isn't crowding that time and confining them? And Vignesh says, I agree with Abdullah. We are burdened with so much of the syllabus to be covered that both teachers and students don't find time for cherishing the subject they learn and teach.
Yeah.
This goes right
Yeah,
back
no,
to
completely agree with Abdullah. What your comment is, I mentioned that in the previous chunk also, that there is a lot of junk existing in our curriculum, and I think if we remove that and we can create a space, there is space. I can tell you there is space. Definitely there is space, and I have seen students completing. And I must tell you one example. There was one request from an engineering student from a good college, and that student said that 4 years of engineering is absurd for me. I don't need 4 years to complete your stupid BE program. I can do it in 1 year. Why I want, and then we discussed that case at the highest level. And AICT as a special case permitted that student, to complete that course in 2 years' time. And he did that successfully. So we cannot treat everyone at the same level. On the other side, if somebody takes 5 years, we put a stamp of failure. It's a big trauma for students. Why we are trying to bind them from all the sides. So reducing their actual burden inside the class and within the curriculum, it is possible, it can be done, and I hope. And there is an autonomy. Institutions at their own level or teachers at their own level also can be done. There is no regulatory bar for this purpose.
Yeah, I would like to add that what Bhushan mentioned earlier about the junk in the management curriculum. There is junk in just about all curricula. If you can remove that junk, that space can be utilized for meaningful education. So I would like to tell a story. When I was teaching in Singapore, National University of Singapore, there was a committee from MIT that came to examine the engineering curriculum as a kind of outside consultants and so on. And the recommendation from the MIT committee was that there was, again, I wouldn't use the word junk. They said something like the overload, information overload. This is what they said in the engineering curriculum. And they said, I'm not sure exactly whether it was reduced to 20% or 25%. They said something like remove at least 70% of the information overload and leave that space for real learning. So to use Bhushan's words, what the MIT committee recommended was remove 70% of that existing curriculum, which is junk, not necessary, and leave students to learn something valuable. And there was a lot of discussion. I don't think that really happened because, as I said, a dynamical system, unless you act at an anchor point, it'll come back to its own regular stuff. So nothing happened. It continued the same way. And that can happen to us too.
Yeah, and Mo, we decided that almost 40%, at a reasonable level, you talked about 70%, but at a more reasonable level, even if we are able to take care of 40% of the component, and I'm not saying you even dump it, I'm also not saying it is junk, information overload. That component, if you remove and tell students to do them themselves, using the different MOOC model available, that
Absolutely.
part and that time of teacher and that time and resources, even 40% can be saved. So the UGC, while I was there, we did this regulation allowing 40% of the credits for students earning from anywhere in the world, not necessarily from their own college, and any subject, So this can really address this question what Abdullah has raised, and also Vigneshwar has added to that. It's a common question in minds of every student.
See, I'll just like to add the industry perspective. When we have to get students hired from campus, there is a lot of on-the-job training that we have to skill them for the job. So it is not like the university has still managed to make them job ready. There is a lot of work which industry takes upon itself. And so that was one thing that I wanted to mention. And there are, requirements on the job which are being met by the Udemy's and the Coursera's, and most resumes that you see today, you see the LinkedIn posts, they're all talking about courses that they have done from a non-formal, parallel education system, which is very much in place. It is meeting the requirements of the new world. So I would say that, just reiterating what you have mentioned, Bhushan, we can probably shed some weight from our curriculum and allow the innate or the basic building blocks that are required to be successful in your future pursuits, and not clutter it like it is right now in the curriculum system, with the curriculum.
Yeah, but I also want to add, Lakshmi, because you brought in industry point. Today industry is expecting that universities should do everything, and we should get a ready-made material. It is not going to happen. As you rightly said, that industries have to invest on their own, and they have to, but they also can connect with university but at the same time, universities cannot become factories to supply you, you meaning industry, that cannot happen. So the basic education component of the university has to be retained. At the same time, the industry's expectations, and industry, I'm sure, will be happy even if you give them a well-rounded student, not expert in some specific subject, that you can train them, or you can also, students can learn on the job also.
True.
Okay, I think we might have time for, we've already gone past the deadline, but we'll take one more question. Yeah? If that's okay with everyone.
Yes.
Yes.
So the quantum of knowledge generated by academia is huge. How do we plan on what to learn if the purpose of education is to develop one's worldview? Now, I think that question was answered by the answers to the previous question. So I'm going to go to another question, which is, as a subject teacher, let's say we are facilitating the learning of a subject in the natural process of the subject, but what about other aspects like relationship with learners? In other words, is there a difference between the purpose of a subject and the purpose of education?
Okay, let me start. This is something that I have thought about. Let me take a subject like the English language. I used to be an English language teacher once upon a time, some 2,000 years ago. Not really. The purpose of the English language teacher as it exists right now is to teach students how to write sentences, how to write essays, and how to read essays. Suppose you change that idea to the following objective: an English language teacher should help the learner how to learn any subject by reading, by writing, by speaking, and listening. The goal is changed. It is not English language proficiency, but using English for a purpose, the purpose of learning. So you want to learn physics. The English language teacher should help students to learn physics. The English language teacher should help the students to reason rigorously. This is not currently the purpose of the English language teacher. For this now, the English language teacher has to collaborate, to form a team with the other teachers, form a single team, which includes science teacher, social science teacher, and so on, mathematics teacher. And they should form a single course to help the students learn what they want to learn. So the identities, I am an English language teacher, I am a math teacher, I am a social science teacher, that should disappear completely. You should say, I am somebody who wants to help the students learn. The fragmented identities should disappear. If that happens, of course, the English language teacher can bring in whatever is special to English language, what that person has learned, and the mathematics teacher can bring in whatever is special about mathematical thinking and the way mathematical theorems are formulated, or mathematical definitions are formulated. All these will come in to help the students learn. So destroy these fragmented identities. That's the only way to help learners learn.
I don't want to add much, but I think this point has been very well addressed by the in the article which Tara, Mo and myself have written. Maybe you can give a link in the chat box so they can read for more information. Thank you.
So,
Good. So, yeah, Tara, if we are okay to conclude this session, yeah, so this has been a very, very interesting discussion for me personally, and I hope everyone feels so. And I think there have been some points which needed a lot of time to deliberate, to analyze, and to debate on. My only request is, to the participants, if there are any follow-up questions, please reach out to the Think team and join this whole exercise to bring about change in the field of education, be a part of the community. Wonderful having both of you as part of the panel, Bhushan and Mo. And Tara, thanks for facilitating as well. So, and everyone in the background, thank you very much. Great session. We look forward to many more such fireside chats. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, well,
Thank you.
I guess
very well done, Lakshmi.
that brings us to the end of today's session. Thank you, everyone, for joining us, the audience out there. And thank you so much, Lakshmi and Bhushan, for taking the time to do this, for such an engaging discussion and the fresh perspective that we had hoped for.
Yeah.
Yes, as Lakshmi said, looking forward to more such conversations.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.